Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure of speaking with Mr. Marc Faber from gloomboomdoom.com. How are you doing today, Mr. Faber?
Yes, very well. And yourself?
I'm doing all
And your
right, thank you.
viewers and listeners also, I hope.
They're all out there, and we're all
Okay.
very excited to have you here.
Well,
I'm very excited to speak
I
with you.
hope I shall not disappoint them.
I'm sure you won't. I wanted to start with what's with China and Russia.
Yes,
There are several issues that are going on there that impact the entire world.
yes,
And the two things that I've been focused on for about a year and a half are the Shanghai Cooperation Organization
yes,
and the Eurasian Economic Union.
yes.
Now these two seem to be moving a little bit closer together, and in conjunction with the BRICS consortium. How do
Yes.
you see that impacting the Western world? And will the Western world even matter in a few years as far as economically?
Well, this is a very interesting question because I've been writing about geopolitics for quite some time because as an economic historian, I'm obviously interested in these issues. Basically, if we go back in history, until the Russian Revolution 1918, Russia and Europe were very closely linked culturally and economically. And at the time, there was no country such as Ukraine and Poland. The German and Austria-Hungarian Empire extended essentially into the Russian border at the time, which was far more to the west than it is today. And in 1905, it was interesting, there was a man in Britain, Halford Mackinder. He wrote basically who would control the hinterland, that is basically the territory between Eastern Europe and Far East Russia, that he called the heartland. That this power would control the world, and so he became essentially, or is recognized as the first geopolitist, the founder of geopolitics. And then, in following on him, after the war in 1945, there was a geostrategist in America. He was Dutch American, who essentially is the founder of the containment theory. He said, yes, the heartland, this landmass, China and Russia, up to Eastern Europe is very important, but more importantly, one should control the rimland, which is countries surrounding there, because you understand, from the 19th century until today, there's this discussion between naval powers and land powers. China and Russia have always been land powers, whereas Britain and America are naval powers. And so basically the aggression of NATO, and we have to recognize it was an aggression in Ukraine, and they wanted to essentially move and build missile bases in eastern Ukraine, east of the Dnieper River, which is clearly Russian territory, historically seen and also ethnically. That then pushed Russia away, and the Europeans were stupid to follow that strategy.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So they alienated Russia, and Russia has become closer to China. In addition to that, the Europeans are brain damaged, not the European people, because the European people would like to actually be closer to Russia, but the politicians, for one reason or another, nobody understands why in Europe, they are following the lead of the neocons in the US and want to prevent Russia from becoming an important country. And so the Russians have moved closer to China. Also, the Europeans were so stupid as to declare an embargo against Russia.
Yes.
Now, Russia has been surrounded for hundreds of years by countries that have as their specialty smuggling. They've been smuggling for centuries. And this embargo is a complete farce. If someone in Russia wants a Mercedes car, he can buy it in Beijing and ship it over by train. And he can buy it in Azerbaijan, he can buy it in Kazakhstan, he can buy it in Moldova, he can buy it anywhere. So, I mean, you understand? I always complain about the economic interventionists, in other words, with fiscal measures and the monetary measures to interfere into the free market. But about as bad as the neo-Keynesian are in economics, about as bad are people who have been running the State Department, like Hillary Clinton,
Yes.
completely clueless, Condoleezza Rice, clueless as well, and so forth and so on.
Well, I mean, and John Kerry, just to carry forward. I mean,
But at least
you know,
he's a reasonably nice person. Can't be said of Hillary and of Condoleezza.
Yeah, he's a nice neocon.
Yes,
he'll smile while he's
yes,
having
yes.
the troops kill you. With the economic situation that we have in the United States, which is we don't have one, in my opinion, and the numbers bear that out. That our economy has kind of fallen off a cliff, and the service industry is the only place that's generating any jobs. I mean, how does the U.S. get out of this current situation without either A, more QE, or B, a war? I mean, is there anything
Well,
else?
the problem is that when the US went into World War II, credit as a percent of the economy was maybe around 110%.
Okay.
Now it's close to 300%. So you understand, to finance a war is going to be, well, they will depend on more money printing. That for sure. They just have to turn it up as they've done under Bush. I mean, the whole credit has risen dramatically and the government debt has risen dramatically. And one day it will come and be very negative because obviously the US pension funds, both private pension funds and especially the state pension funds, are grossly underfunded. Not a little bit, grossly underfunded.
Yes.
So either benefits will have to be cut. In a democracy where everybody wants to get as big a share of the pie, it's going to be difficult to tell your parents and my parents and all the retirees, look, next month you'll get 10% less pensions because then the economy will really tumble. And to increase taxation is not working very well above a certain level.
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing stresses and strains with
Yeah,
look at what's
sure.
happening in Illinois.
Yes.
I mean,
So in my view, the Fed will have to continue to print money. This is not what I recommend, but this
Right.
is likely what will happen.
and
And then the value, of course, of paper currency goes down over time. Question is against what? I think against precious metals and against probably real estate in selected areas, and maybe against the one or the other foreign currency.
and speaking of currencies being devalued, coming back to China, they have been. I heard someone. I wish I could remember who it was, but here at the conference, at the New Orleans Investment Conference, someone said that China has dumped the equivalent of about 12% of their U.S. holdings, of their reserve holdings or treasuries, and if there's nobody buying our bonds, how much longer is it going to be before anybody even wants to use the dollar
Yes,
anywhere?
correct. But the Fed can implement QE4 and buy more. You understand? That's what I'm saying.
But
basically, these clowns at central banks, uh, they're playing with other people's money.
yes,
You know, it's not their money on the line.
right.
And when they get sacked or when they retire, they go and advise Goldman Sachs, who they fed information, inside information already before. So they get a nice pension from Goldman Sachs or anybody else, as in the form of consulting fees and so forth. It's all a game. It's all dishonest. That's why I think the system will not survive forever. But it can survive for another 5 years or so. And then we have, the longer this goes on with fiscal spending and deficits, budget deficits, and money printing, the more vulnerable the system becomes.
Is the yuan renminbi being included in the SDR? Is that any impact, or is that just political grandstanding?
I think that obviously over time, if you look at the history of major currencies since the time of the Romans, basically the Roman coins were the accepted currency at the time of Jesus Christ and so forth. And later on, we had the first major international currency was a Portuguese. I forgot what they called it, peseta or whatever it is, and then the Spanish currency, and then basically the British pound, and then the US dollars. But reserve currencies or global currencies, they don't last forever.
Okay.
And given the fact that in many sectors the Chinese economy is now much larger than the US economy, and that China has become a trading partner of over 120 different countries, whereas the US is just the largest trading partner of 74 different countries. Given these facts, I believe that over time, the role of the US dollar will diminish and probably be replaced at some point in the future by new currencies, or the mess could be so bad that eventually the world will go back to some kind of a gold standard.
Which was going to be my next question. Do you see either the yuan or the Russian ruble or some form of Eastern currency being gold backed in the not
Yes,
too distant
but
future?
I think also in the Western world, because I've noticed this uh, prior to 2000, there were only two or three economists, including myself, that were concerned about the excessive credit growth in the United States, and also about rapid monetary growth, but especially credit growth. Then we had the Nasdaq collapse, and then what they did is the neo-Keynesian, they actually advocated the creation of a housing bubble, with people like Krugman saying a housing bubble would help the economy a lot. Bubbles are a disaster for the typical man on the street, for the median household.
Right.
It destroys wealth, it doesn't create wealth. And then we were critical about the Fed, and then the 2007 crisis happened. But then the media was able to turn the crisis and make actually Ben Bernanke a hero.
Called him that.
They called him a hero, yes, for having essentially saved the global financial system. I'm not sure the financial system is worth saving, with the bankers who lost tons of money and had to be bailed out by the government, taking record bonuses. Something is wrong in the system, but this is this crony capitalism, the link between government and the banking sector and the Fed. They're all linked together.
Sounds
Anyway,
kind of criminal.
of course, it's criminal. But who isn't criminal among the politicians in the US? So, anyway, to make a long story short, in recent times, say over the last 12 months, I have noted much more criticism of the Fed and other central banks by, say, mainstream economists. Even they wake up slowly that this is unprecedented in the human history of more than 5,000 years, from the old times in Babylon to today, that interest rates are this low for such a long period of time.
Yes.
Never happened before. But under the influence of some professors that went to the Ivy schools and were brainwashed with theories that are borderline economic sophism, they have no common sense whatsoever. that these professors now essentially set the price of money. Some set it at a negative rate and so forth. That this is happening cannot end well in the long run.
No,
It will end very badly.
very badly.
But you understand, then the media will say, well, it ended badly. You know why? Because of the rich people. They made money. When actually rich people today, most of the money is the money that the Fed printed. It trickled down to the poor people, to the waiters and the barmen and so forth, but it has trickled down. The big went into asset price increases, so they became very rich. So the Fed is responsible, not the rich people. The rich people will be blamed. And when that also fails, because the rich people, even if they give all their wealth, it won't help by that time. Then the Fed will say, you know what? The reason all this failed is because some people are hoarding gold.
Yes.
And then they'll go after honest people that have some gold coins and gold in their safes or in their homes, and they'll take it away. And that's why I'm telling everybody, yes, you should own physical gold, platinum, silver, but you have to store it outside the US. And not in Europe, which is run by Draghi, who is getting his orders from the Fed.
Yes.
And not in Switzerland, but say in Asia. Maybe in Shanghai, maybe in Hong Kong.
Anywhere,
Yes.
anywhere that's east of here. Okay. Well, we've been speaking with Dr. Marc Faber from gloomboomdoom.com, and certainly appreciate all your time today, Dr. Faber. And is there anything you would like to leave the audience with?
No, thank you very much. The last thing I want to say, nobody knows how the world will look like in 5 years' time. Because to make predictions about markets is very difficult, but it's impossible to make any predictions when the markets are manipulated by a bunch of clowns in central banks around the world.
Yes.
And so you have to be diversified. You have to own some real estate, some equities, maybe some bonds and cash, and some precious metals. And I would essentially look at the world as becoming extremely competitive because we have over 3 billion people coming out of China, India, and other countries being now educated. And these people are hungry and willing to work at any cost. So they'll work a lot. And the comfortable living that you and I may have enjoyed in our youth, because don't forget the US from 1800 to say 1960, 1965, every generation was richer than the one before.
Yes.
And now we have in the Western world, in Western Europe and in the US, a generation of young, they will earn less than their parents and die poorer than their parents. Courtesy of the Federal Reserve and of the interventionists.
The criminals.
The criminals, yes.
Well, Dr. Faber, I certainly appreciate all your time, and I hope that we can do this again in the future.